Today, let's look at our first altered TCG deck profile, looking at my Muna, Teija, and Nauraa plant ramp deck. This deck has been a ton of fun. It performs very well. It's able to beat all sorts of decks in the metagame, including Waru and Max, Sigismar, Bravos decks, Izmir decks. It performs super well, and we have a lot to say about this list. Very fun to play if you like ramping and playing gigantic things really early. This is going to be the deck for you, so let's jump right into it. What's up, everyone? It's Dan with Maindeck, and welcome to another altered deck profile, our first one using the full release of Set 1 Beyond the Gates. And as I mentioned in the intro, we're going over a Teija and Nauraa Muna plant ramp deck. This deck is so fun to play. This is one of my favorite strategies. It's very straightforward. You're going to know exactly what you're doing as soon as you look at this deck list, but hey, it works pretty well. It works like a charm. And if you want to play turn 3 Hydrocanas somewhat consistently, I mean, basically as consistently as you can draw them and a couple of ramp sources, then you are in the right place. This deck is an absolute blast to play, especially when you get to drop 2 Hydrocanas on board turn 3 and turn 4, and you just sit there and wait for your victory, or, you know, for your opponent to answer them. But let's jump right into this and talk about exactly what's going on. Of course, Teija and Nauraa is our hero, and the reason we're doing Teija and Nauraa because you get this boost, and this extra boost on the first character you play every turn turns on a lot of interactions that we're going to look at in the list, and also is used just to, you have a few things that are going to anchor plants down. You have a Hydrocana who's going to become a 5/5/5 instead of 4/4/4, which is actually a pretty big deal the turn you play it. And you have some other things that are just nice to put boosts on. None of the other Muna heroes really made a lot of sense for this. I mean, you could maybe do a Rin and Orchid list, but Arjun and Spike certainly didn't make sense for this. Teija, I think, is absolutely where it's at, and we'll look at all those interactions as we go. Now, our first card we're going to talk about is Spindle Harvesters. Spindle Harvesters in here now. There is a plant sub-theme to this deck, and I think a lot of people build ramp and they just go, oh, I'm just going to put in a ton of huge things. No. We want these little plants in here. We want these little plants in here because when we get to talking about Hydrocana, Hydrocana has an ability that says it has tough X, where X is the number of plants you control, and you want to have as many of these as possible because when your opponent does answer the Hydrocana, you want it to cost as much of their turn as possible. But in addition to that, having the plant package gives us some pretty potent plays even when we don't have a Hydrocana out there. It is really worthwhile to have. So these Spindle Harvesters are a key part of that because there's cute little guys out there doing their best, munching on some pollen or something, harvesting from the spindle, but they are going to be often a 2/1/1 because they're going to get Teija's boost if they're the first thing you play, and they're going to anchor down there and just hold down the fort, sometimes steal you a side even. They're great. They're so good for their 1 cost. They're totally worth it. We have Tiny Jin. This is the first rare that we're running in the deck, and Tiny Jin is one of the best cards. I mean, this is an instant slot in if you're doing a ramp Muna deck with Teija, because Teija gives Tiny Jin the boost, meaning on turn 1, you can play Tiny Jin and still play a Spindle Harvesters potentially, and then immediately get that ramp, which, by the way, you're going to take that ramp every single time this leaves. We don't care about putting it in the reserve at all and playing it again. You just want the ramp, and with the boost from Teija, getting 1/4/1 on turn 1 is often going to steal a side on its own. You can potentially do Tiny Jin into Spindle and take both sides turn 1 and get a ramp, which is just an absurd amount of value. That's like the ideal turn 1 you can play with this deck. If you do happen to see that, you're in a pretty good place. Moving on, we have a Sneasel Shroom. Sneasel Shroom is our next plant vibe in here in the deck, being a plant. I tried running rare Sneasel Shroom for a while, and it actually was pretty good, but I had another rare that I'd rather put in, so I ended up taking it out. I still have this normal common one in here because, you know what, just like Spindle Harvesters, he's going to get down there. He's going to be a 1/1/1 or a 2/2/2, depending. Anchor down for a couple of turns, sometimes steal a side, but mostly just be a cheap plant to play to turn on some of your other plant benefits or buff Hydrocana's tough. We have Youngsu Verdant Weaver in here, the common one. This is one of our plant payoffs since we're putting a bunch of plants in the deck and we're anchoring them down. It's not too hard to get 2 plants into play, especially when you have 2 Hydrocanas in play already. Well, it's already turned on. So this means he's just going to be a 3-cost 5/5/5 a lot of the time. which is great. It's just going to help you win the other side. Sometimes you just get one Hydrocana down, and then your play the next turn is to go Spindle Yongsu or Sneezer Shroom Yongsu or something, and that gives you a lot of power on the other side for the cost, which is really the kind of the big Muna thing, right? We just want to get a lot of value for the cost we put in, whether that be a big thing on one turn or a medium-sized thing over multiple turns. And Yongsu helps us with the former, the big thing on one turn. Now we're going to get to my first unique of the deck, and I'm going to say with the unique, I'm going to show you the uniques I'm currently running, and if you build this deck, you should maybe use these as a guide for what kind of uniques I like in the deck, or just pick your own and play them. The uniques aren't going to be super critical to building this deck. I'm on the lookout right now for uniques that are going to add additional ramp sources, but it's tough to find exactly the kind I want. So hey, I'll hit you back up in the comments down below if I found some kind of ideal uniques. But for now, the ones that I'm using in my collection here are this Kakaba Legion Commander, is a 3/3/2/3/2. The reason that I'm using him is he has, when played from anywhere, if you control 2 or more plants other than him, which he's not one, up to 2 target characters each gain 2 boosts. So it's super easy to turn this on. He puts a ton of stats on board for the cost. And sometimes actually this reserve ability, the support ability to have each player draw a card, is kind of nice just to help you dig a little bit, because this deck goes low on cards, super low on cards, hardly plays out of the reserve. It is one of the flaws of the deck, but it's okay because you're putting so much power on the board that it's just not going to matter that much. So that's that unique. We are running Aja now. Aja is our next ramp source. I want you to keep a count of the number of ramps we've played so far. So far we had Tiny Jin. Now we have Aja as the next one. Aja, the card we get to spoil actually here on main deck, and I'm super excited to get to play her in here. She is so good. Every time I play her, I'm like, man, this card is sick. She's a 4-cost 4/5/4. Those stats are huge. And has, when played from hand, each player puts the top card of their deck in their mana zone. Now, I assure you, most of the time, your mana being higher is going to be better than your opponent's mana being higher. So this may seem like it is a symmetrical effect, but you definitely want to get this benefit. Aja is how you are going to go turn 1, any of your other ramp sources, Tiny Jin or Mana Channeling, or one of the other ones I'm going to talk about. And then turn 2, you're going to drop this Aja. It's going to get you that 6th mana. Then the next turn, you play the 7th, and you are off to the races. Time for Hydrocana. So Aja is perfect for doing that, while also holding down the board with these huge stats, easily taking a side against most decks on turn 2 with a 4/5/4 stat line while she ramps you. It's so good. She is awesome. Big fan of Aja. Verdant back, I want to put out the respect for this turtle, man. He's so strong. 4/4 for a 5/5/6. He is defender unless you control 2 or more other plants. So when you get to that late game and you have the Spindle and the Hydrocana down, you drop the Verdant back, you're going to steal the other side with Verdant back. With the Teija buff, it's a 6/6/7. Remember, it's just huge. But even if you can't get the 2 plants out there, honestly, with a deck like this, all you're trying to do is get to your late game threats, which you're hoping to play early game, but get to your gigantic threats, and sometimes just putting a 5/5/6 defender down to hold off a side to buy you time, that's good enough too. The defender isn't that big of a drawback because it does stop your opponent from advancing. And when you get the situation where your Hydrocana is already taking one side and all you need to do is not lose the other while the Hydrocana grows, well, he does that too. So love the Verdant back, great. And it's just another plant option that you can drop down to buff Hydrocana. It's tough, so he's great. Awesome, big fan of that. Next unique, and this is honestly, I think this is one of my best uniques that I have. This Quetzalcoatl is crazy, guys. This is so nuts. If you can find anything like this, pop this in your deck. He's a 5-hand, 3 reserve, 4/4/3. When played from hand, if you control 2 or more boosted characters, keep in mind, Hydrocana gets boosted. Whatever you play with Teija gets boosted. You can anchor something boosted. He can count himself as well. So if you just have a Spindle Harvesters from last turn sitting in play, playing Quetzalcoatl, he gets boosts, he's turned on, he works. It's pretty powerful. If you control 2 or more boosted characters, you may put target character or permanent in its owner's mana zone. That is removal for your opponent's anything. It is an additional ramp source. If you want to ramp yourself as well, again, you can actually target your Spindle Harvesters or something and throw it into your mana as well. Haven't usually had to do that, but usually you just play this as a removal that drops a 4/4/3 on board. When played from reserve, each player draws a card, and that's really powerful because he also says when an opponent draws 1 or more card, which you get to force them to do, or does resupply, target character gains 2 boosts. So when you play him from reserve, he's a 3-cost for 6/6/5 stats, as well as drawing you a card and the opponent a card, but who cares? he does it all. He does it on both sides. He's powerful. Love this unique. Find anything like this for your deck. I put him in here because he has that ramp ability, but also he's a flexible removal source. And again, card draw is a little tight. He fills in so many gaps in this deck. So huge fan of him. All right, now let's get to our end game threats. These are the things we're ramping into. Son of Yggdrasil rare. We play the rare one because that tough one. We just want to have that little bit of tough, but he's a 6/3/3 gigantic, going to push on both sides always. Now, we don't have any issue with forest already, so I kind of wish he had a little bit more even stats or something, but regardless, he still is a gigantic thing with Teija and Nauraa, a 7/4/4 with tough 1 and gigantic. And then it has a nice little support ability to anchor something down to 3 costs or less, which is good for that, like the Yongsu or something. You can potentially anchor down for free as a way to, really maximize your resources on a turn. But a lot of the time, he's just, that tough one's going to make it so your opponent has to spend that much more to try and stop him, which gives you a lot more value for the ability to take both sides again by pushing some of your cheaper things out after they spend all their mana to remove them. He's not your ideal thing to play early on, but he's going to steal the game in the mid to late game. And if you ever go to a tie game, he's going to be your best friend when you get to the sudden death. All right, now, of course, Hydrocana. This is the card. This is what we are ramping into. Hydrocana is a 7-cost 0/0/0 with Eternal, does not go to reserve during rest. He just sits out there, never leaves. Tough X, where X is the number of plants you control. Hydrocana, of course, himself is a plant, meaning he already has tough 1, but will have up to tough 2, 3, 4, depending on how many plants you put out. When you play him from anywhere, gains 4 boosts, and at noon he gains 4 boosts. So your goal is to get this Hydrocana out as soon as possible. Drop it turn 3, get it down there, let it start growing. If the opponent has the removal, okay, do it again next turn, because you could still just play it again. And that if they do it turn 3, it probably took up their whole turn to like paint prison it or something. And if they do it later than that, you was already sitting in play, so you still have the whole turn to play. Well, they had to spend 4 or 5 or 6 mana to get rid of it. It is actually, it's not a big deal when they remove this thing. That's the thing that I think is the craziest. People are so worried about going all in on a Hydrocana. Well, that's why the rest of the deck is good. Then you just play the rest of the deck out there, replay the Hydrocana or something. And he's just going to grow and grow and grow. It gets to the point where the opponent has to just give up one side entirely. Let alone the games where you drop 1 on each side, you can actually just sit back and wait until you win the game. A lot of the time, it's absolutely crazy. They're going to give tough to each other as well. Oh, it's nuts. So that's why I built this deck. It is so fun to play Hydrocana. If you like playing gigantic dragons, this is certainly the deck for you. And then finally, my last unique here is one I got out of a retail pack. It took a little bit. Sorry it took so long to get the video because I was waiting to have the image up here from the retail edition, from the fix some bug in the server. But Loki, this is a fun, unique 8/7. This is just basically another gigantic thing I can play into for a 7/7/5. With when played from anywhere, each player discards their hand and draws 3 cards, which is the Loki ability. And low key is actually kind of good in Muna when you get so low on hand and reserve a lot of the time, and your opponent's playing Ortis or something gets so high on it. But even better than that, I think this Loki is incredible because this unique one has when played from hand, you may put a card from your hand in reserve. If you do, target character other than me gains fleeting, anchored, or asleep. Now, there are a lot of uses to this, but the first thing I want to point out is that these abilities will both trigger when played from hand, which means you get to choose the order that they resolve in. If this Loki is the last card you have in hand, you can resolve the when played from anywhere ability first to draw a new hand, and then spend one of those cards to give something. Usually Asleep's going to be the target for this, I think, very often. Or if you are down to just a couple of cards left in hand, you can resolve the when played from hand first to get rid of one more of those into reserve, protecting it, while you then activate the when played from anywhere, then discard whatever's left in your hand, if anything, and then draw new cards while doing the same to your opponent. So the combination of these two abilities is actually really cool, really synergistic on the Loki, making him a very valuable card to play. And when you get to that high mana cost, he's a gigantic thing to play on like the other side when you have a Hydrocana locking down one, who also is then going to asleep one of their units. He's like, it's almost a sure thing you're going to win that side if you can asleep something strong and also put this down while you have a Hydrocana on the other. It feels pretty good. So he's a dope little, just like a 7th extra gigantic thing I can potentially ramp into. And I recommend looking around at your Lokis, see if there's other cool Lokis you can throw into here if you like that as well. Now for our spells are a lot of, we have a couple more rare cards here. We have our Mana Eruption rare, which is going to allow us to have flexible removal on anything. This card has been so clutch, so key. I would never take this out of this deck. 2/2 fleeting, discard one of your mana orbs. If you do discard target character or permanent, you're going to get so many mana orbs in this deck, guys. Don't even worry about it. This is just going to be that flexible removal that, just like the picture shows, can destroy the Kraken, can get rid of other Son of Yggdrasils or Hydrocanas or whatever you need to get rid of without costing you very much. It just straight discards them. It doesn't send them to reserve. It's so powerful. And then hitting permanents, Brassbug Hive, get out of here. Such a powerful removal card. We have Beauty Sleep as well in here. Now this is the ephemeral, not ephemeral, the eternal, the card we're always going to play in the ubiquitous. I think that's the term I'm looking for. The ubiquitous Muna card. We're always going to play this at common, which is because it's just going to be cheap removal. You get to that late game, you drop down your Son of Yggdrasil and all your threats, and your opponent's like, oh, I got you. I have my giant Shenlong or my giant Atlas, and you just Beauty Sleep it. And then you win the game for 1 cost. It's crazy. And then 3 cost of the reserve. It doesn't even have fleeting either. So of course we're going to throw this in a common. It's just flexible. It does the trick. It always is helpful. Mana Channeling is our final rare in the deck. Mana Channeling is a 2 cost, 2 reserve fleeting. Put the top card of your deck in your mana zone. This is actually probably the worst ramp spell in the deck, but we just put it in here because with the combination of Mana Channeling, the Tiny Djinn, the Aja, and then we have one more card here in the Bountiful Meadow that we're about to show. We have 12 ramp sources, which makes it fairly consistent to find 1 or 2 by the time you've dug through about 8 cards in your deck, 6 cards in your opening, and then 2 more at the next turn. It's just, you just got to have the quantity of them. That's all we're really aiming for, is to have as many of these ramp sources as we can. So we play the channeling to make sure we can hit that turn 1 ramp, turn 2 ramp. And then speaking of that, finally, our last card is Bountiful Meadow, which is a permanent, which is sort of a ramp source because all the things we actually want to play fast are like Son of Yggdrasil and Hydrocana are in fact plants. So this basically counts as having another resource in play. Make sure you don't forget to activate it when you play your plant cards. You'll see actually in the gameplay we're about to do, I forgot to activate it before I played my plant. It ended up not being a big deal, but just make sure you use them. It's a nice card because it also, another thing the ramp can do sometimes, this or Mana Channeling or whatever, is just can sandbag turns a little bit while you're waiting to see where your opponent plays. Great if you're holding back removal spells or something you don't want to pass, of course, but you don't want to answer something small and board. Another, I think you could say, a mistake I made in the gameplay video that you'll see here, but yeah, Bountiful Meadow is just another option for ramp. That's why we play it. So it's not too complicated of a deck. Like I said, you're just trying to ramp turn 1, turn 2, and then play a Hydrocana turn 3. That's the ideal sequence. Otherwise, play big things, hold down the fort until you can get your giant things out there. You have a lot of ways to get a lot of power on the board. The plant package works extremely well, whether or not you have the giant threats, but when you do have the giant threats, you just can steal the game sometimes. Maximize your toughness. The big thing that I want to mention here too is that this deck plays best when you're playing second, when your opponent gets to be the starting player on turn 1. That works super well for your sequence because you go turn 1, you get to play your, for example, your Tiny Djinn to whichever side makes the most sense. Turn 2, you're going to start off by just playing Aja or ramping or doing something that doesn't really matter. And then turn 3, your opponent's going to play to the board somewhere. Then you're going to play your Hydrocana on the spot where it can potentially steal a side, letting you then turn 4, you start, so you get to play a second plant right away and then buff up the tough on the Hydrocana. When you're going second, it's actually remarkably better than when you're going first because everything just lines up perfectly when you get that ramp start. Now, when you don't have the ramp start, well, it's all out the window, but it's just something to note that you are going to hope you go first or hope you go second whenever possible. If you ever have the choice in a best of 3 or something, go second. That's definitely preferred for this deck. So with all that said, let's just jump in. We'll look at the gameplay. You can kind of see how the deck plays out in an actual gameplay situation. Hope it gives you a better feel for it, and then we will close things out. Okay, we are playing against, of course, an Ortis deck, Sigismar and Wingspan. At least it's not Waru and Mac, but it's all right either way. Let's look at our opening hand, and we do see some things we like. We have a Bountiful Meadow, so we do have at least one option to ramp a little bit. We have our Loki, who we only really want to see late game. Probably going to mana that, mana the Verdant back, and mana the Yongsu. I think we'll just start with these, allowing us to kind of get some Spindle Harvesters to maybe push on a side. Well, that's pretty tough against Ortis, but I can't play any of these. Anyway, the only thing I could do is Verdant back turn 2, but I'd rather be ramping if I can, so I'm hoping to draw into an additional ramp source. We'll just drop these ones here, and yeah, we'll go with this plan of Bountiful Meadow into potentially a Spindle Harvesters on the side. If they try to drop on the other side, yeah, they probably will. Okay, yeah, okay. We're going first, so we're going to go Bountiful Meadow. Then we'll see they will almost 100% drop on to the Companion Expedition. Then our Spindle Harvesters can come down and actually steal the hero from them. Oh, they'll do a carrier too. Okay, I shouldn't have said almost 100% because that's obviously a good play also. We'll use our Meadow just for fun to play the Spindle Harvesters over here and not only take this side but deny them that side as well, which is a nice way to start against the Ortis faction. That'll give us one progression there, and then we will go to the next turn. Okay, so we did see a mana channeling, which is excellent. That's what we like to see. I would prefer to have Aja here, because Aja actually pushes on a side, but that's okay. We're just going to drop the Yongsu. And yeah, we're going dangerously low on hand size. That's just how this deck works. That's okay. We'll be all right. They're going to play an Ortis Trooper on that side. That sounds good to me. I'm just going to mana channeling. We're going to mana channeling. We have one card left. We just hope they don't... our opponents always have nothing to discard our last card in hand, because that is certainly the danger zone. And they are welcome to play something to the Hero Expedition as well to try and steal it, because we're just going to be passing. Yeah, they will swipe it with an Ozma, draw a card. Good for them. That sounds good. We'll just pass. Fine by me. They can have both. We're gonna take we're gonna take a few hits early on, right? We're gonna let them progress a little bit. Getting just one on the first turn and denying them one was actually just fine with us. That works. But we're going to hopefully drop this Hydrocana and make it kind of difficult to deal with. Now, we already have all the mana we need, so we don't really need Aja, but instead that Beauty Sleep might be kind of good. I mean, the Aja is a body, so it's not the worst thing in the world, but I'd rather hold on to the Beauty Sleep, I think. But we definitely have to mana this turn, because now we are at 6 mana. 6 mana plus the Bountiful Meadow means Hydrocana is dropping. Now, I prefer going second with this deck, so we could be going second here and deploy the Hydrocana in the most vulnerable spot, but we cannot. So instead, we're going to go first and place it. Guess it doesn't really matter too much, but we'll just play it on to the Hero Expedition. And either they'll have the answer for it or they won't. We're about to find out. If they have the answer, we are pretty much losing this game. If they don't have any sticky note seals right now, then we're going to start to be in a pretty good spot. Now, the advantage of going second, of course, as I mentioned, is that when you're going second, you get to not only deploy the Hydrocana in the most strategically useful spot, but then you get to take the first action on the next turn, which allows you to deploy another plant like the Spindle Harvesters to raise the tough of the Hydrocana to the point where it's very difficult for the opponent to get rid of it without wasting their entire turn, and then you've already played something out there as well, which is pretty nice. But even going second, we're going to be okay here. Hopefully, they're thinking a lot, so it sounds like they don't just immediately have the sticky note seals, which is a preferred situation for us to be in. All right, they play a Trooper, and we are just passing out here. That's fine. The reason I chose the Hero Expedition was because I knew they were going to be a little weaker on Forest there, or on Grass, or whatever we call it. They still have the mana to play something else there and steal it, which maybe they were trying to draw into? No, they got it. Okay. And they got a Cadets there too. All right, so they did indeed swipe it from us, which is fine. This is probably the last turn they'll be able to swipe it without finding a removal spell. Then we can focus on the companion side. Double progression for Ortis. Wow, okay, well, we're not playing a ton here. The Bountiful Meadow, we can freely mana now because it is just, it's another mana itself. I mean, the advantage it has is it can sandbag a little bit so you can watch your opponent play. It's like a 2-cost after you, but We'll just go ahead and mana this because having more mana is better than having a bountiful meadow. And now our beauty sleeps are here to try and they're not as good when we don't have any units with actual stats on them. The Spindle Harvesters being a 2/1/1 isn't going to let us get a lot of ground with the beauty sleep against all these little Ortis recruits, but we'll just have to see. There, cadets over to that side. Okay, that's fine. We're going to deploy Spindle Harvesters over to this side too, even though we know we're not really going to compete. Right now we can make them think we're going to, but most importantly, the Spindle Harvesters is going to increase the tough on the Hydrocana for this turn and the next turn as well, making it a little more difficult to deal with it. They're going to go ahead and play a Foundry Mechanic on this side. I don't believe that they're going to actually reach the stats that they need to here. With just 3 left, that doesn't seem possible. We're just going to go ahead and take our pass. We're saving these beauty sleeps for a more important turn. They have a Sandman, but not nearly enough to put Hydrocana to sleep here. So that sounds fine to me. Okay, it is getting a little dicey. We're going to have to start progressing here fast. Hopefully we can find another giant thing to ramp into. We'll find a Quetzalcoatl who's actually going to be kind of good here. Mana Channeling is an easy mana right now. That sounds good. Ooh, actually, Mana Channeling I shouldn't have mana'd because I need to take an action before I can really do this Quetzalcoatl. Well, I guess not. I can Quetzalcoatl and put the Ortis Carrier into their mana, which might be kind of nice. I also could target a token with it. They won't even get a mana out of that? I think this is fine, though. We're just going to target the carrier and make our life a little easier. Send that to the mana zone. This is, yeah, this is the power of this unique Quetzalcoatl. It's very flexible removal. Works in a lot of scenarios. And now if they do any card draw or resupply, I'm going to boost up my team also. So makes it nice to play first action or later on as well. Play a Gatekeeper on that side. With 4 left, they need to win on water. Water's our weakest, though. I don't really have a good way to, like, pass the action here. And using Beauty Sleep just to negate 1 seems so bad. But we know that they can, well, they could play a Sandman and gain 3 more, which would tie us. So we kind of like have to, unfortunately. We have to Beauty Sleep. We'll just choose this thing. That hopefully puts them 1 off of being able to get anywhere. This Foundry Mechanic actually pretty annoying, though. Yep. Sounds right. Man, I don't want to use another Beauty Sleep here. But it would be pretty easy for them to steal. I have to use both Beauty Sleeps, I think. On the worst targets ever, but oh well. Alright. Alright, we'll deal with those next turn instead. Okay, so we got them to pass. We're going to take both sides, getting us a little bit closer now. A couple of Beauty Sleeps, and we're going to keep the Quetzalcoatl because it's a lot of stats. We're going to lose one of these Beauty Sleeps. I really didn't want to have to use both of these, but that's how it goes. Ooh, and we got the Son of Yggdrasil. All right. Okay, now we're talking. 6, 7, 8, 9. We do have the mana to do both. I don't think we're going to see a Robin Hood. So we could hold on to the Tiny Djinn just to have some more stats next turn, which I don't hate. 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, I like having all of these stats now. He's bad on water, though. Both these are kind of bad on water. and water is where we're fighting for over here. I think we'll pass mana though. I don't think we need to. I just don't see it being a thing that we need to do. All right, Brandowski's starting. This is where they can nail the Hydrocana if they finally found a sticky note seals. We are praying that they didn't. Although it does take up a lot of their turn, and we have a powerful Son of Yggdrasil as well. That's the big benefit of the tough, is just making them use a lot of their mana, a lot of the resources to get their removal out. But because of our Quetzalcoatl, we did give them an extra resource as well, so we're not actually up on them. The Tiny Djinn was a reasonable resource here. I just didn't feel like I needed to do it this turn. And sometimes when you draw into a bunch of ramp or something, you just need every body you can get in hand. I'm going to start with the Sandman, dropping some tokens down on that side too. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Well, I think what we're going to do is we want to get the counter probably on the Son of Yggdrasil. Not that it matters too much, I guess. But it has tough 1 compared to the Quetzalcoatl. So, and it's a plant. And dropping a plant first would increase the tough over here. Might make it harder for them to answer it if they did find anything. They were like holding on to it for some reason. So we'll put our Son of Yggdrasil down here as well. I mean, they're definitely not winning on this side. Did I screw up again? I forgot to Bountiful Meadow. Oh, I really screwed up, guys. I forgot to use the Bountiful Meadow on the Son of Yggdrasil. That's something I've been doing on Board Game Arena because I don't think about it in this the frame of this game exactly. So that's unfortunate. That's huge. I'm gonna knock it to Quetzalcoatl now. I'm gonna have to just play the Tiny Djinn, which doesn't really do anything for me. Oh, they have a charge. Okay. Was I winning this side anyway? 4, 5, 6. I wasn't going to win this side anyway, even with the Quetzalcoatl and the boosts. So, well, all right then. I wasn't going to win anyway. Fair enough. I mean, I could have still progressed is the thing, though. Potentially. Which I can't do now. I think I just pass. Okay, so they're going to get that side. Yeah, big misplay on my part, unfortunately. Ooh, and now what do we do here? I hate to say it, I'm going to lose the Beauty Sleep because I think I just want these stats. I think we're going to go into this turn and have a whole lot of stats for them to contend with. Another Hydrocana. Okay. I feel okay manaing the Djinn now. See, if I just managed the Djinn, I wouldn't have gotten myself into that corner either. But again, that charge was too strong. It actually ended up being okay. All right, well, let's drop this guy again. I think that's going to be better than playing the Hydrocana, because the Hydrocana is just so much weaker right away. I doubt they'll be able to come up with a turn that strong. That turn was only as strong as it was because we had given them a couple of units that turn to charge into. Now what we're going to do is we'll Quetzalcoatl here. We're going to resupply and then select the target to gain the boosts. We're not going to put all of our eggs in one basket, I think, here. There's really no reason to do that. We're just going to give the boosts to the Quetz. So you have a 7/4/4 and a 6/6/5. We'll spread it out a little bit in case they do have some removal. There's the sticky note seals. So they're going to choose the Hydrocana. which still puts us in a pretty good position. Now this is where if I had put the boost on the sun, it'd be a slightly better position, because I think they'll have a way to potentially get at least a tie in water on this side. We'll have to see. If they tie on water or win on water on that side, then obviously we're in trouble. But with just 2, Ortis doesn't all that often beat the stats for the cost. As in, like, have 3 water for 2 cost. They're usually pretty even. Yep, they can play a 1/1/1 there. And end, and that's it. Then we're going to steal both sides with the power of Son of Yggdrasil, and that is a victory. So that is the power of the ramp deck, getting up that early Hydrocana. Even though we took all of those early losses, we were able to just hold down that side and focus on the other one. I even misplayed in there, and I'm sure I'll hear that in the comments with my missing the Bountiful Meadow play, but it ended up not really mattering that much. There were a few other things I think I could have sequenced a little differently, a little better, made a couple different choices, but you can see the power of the deck, and it truly is a ton of fun to play. So I hope that helped you guys see where the power is. Definitely give this deck a try, make your own tweaks, find your own cool uniques for the deck, and let me know how it goes for you in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed this deck profile. We're going to do more of these if you guys did like these. Would love to hear your feedback down below, but thank you so much for watching this one, and we'll see you in the next one.